Geek Insider presents Geeky, Cheeky, and Downright Freaky with Matthew Harris. He's taking a closer look at some of the wonderfully weird, gloriously geeky, and freaky things in our world.
Good afternoon, morning, evening, whatever the case may be, geeks. I'm your host, Matthew Harris, if you have to know the last name, but otherwise I'm just Matthew, otherwise known as That Geek Matthew, and I'm with geekinsider.com, and this is Geeky, Cheeky, and Downright Freaky. This is going to be a new show that I'm going to do every week, starting at 6 o'clock Central on Wednesdays. And we're just going to take a closer look at just some of the weirder things in the world around us. I've got tonight on board, if you read the description, I'm doing the Georgia Guidestones, the Worldwide Hum, and then one of my favorite topics, the Mandela Effect. Now, of course, there are millions of articles out there on all three of these topics, articles and videos. And so I'm not going to do the same old thing. When the current pandemic started, I brought up the Georgia Guidestones to a couple of friends, and none of them knew what it was. And so I thought, well, I bet there's a lot of other folks out there that just have no freaking clue what the Georgia Guidestones are. And so I wanted to go over that as well as the Worldwide Hum, because I did a little investigation on it a couple of months back, and found some interesting facts, or at least interesting tidbits of information. And then, of course, like I said, one of my favorite subjects, you can find a lot of articles on geekinsider.com that I've written over the past couple of years about the subject. And so we'll go into that a little bit. But first up, I wanted to discuss the Georgia Guidestones. And they are, the set of stones that there they are on the screen if you're watching live via our YouTube channel. But you can look them up online if you're listening on the podcast. These are 5 granite stones. There's 4 in a circle, 1 in the center, and then as you can see, the capstone on top. And they're aligned astronomically. They're just over 19 feet tall. They weigh over 237,000 pounds. And the land was purchased. The reason that this kind of falls under the cheeky is that the land was purchased back in 1979 by a person who said that they were working with a conglomerate, and he went by a pseudonym, anonymous, and they went by R.C. Christensen, which there's a whole slew of thinking about R.C. Christensen maybe being a pseudonym for the Rosicrucians, which that's something else you can look into. It's a whole nother rabbit hole. But he told the contractor that he was a small group of loyal Americans, and that the stones would function as a compass, a calendar, and a clock. And he was adamant that the structure was capable of withstanding catastrophic events. The whole thing was unveiled in March of 1980, and a few feet to the west of the monument is an explanatory tablet, which is right here. And it says, let these Guidestones be Guidestones to an age of reason. I ain't got my glasses on. I guess I should put them on before I start trying to read crap. But anyway, so that's a few feet to the west. It tells that the languages that the Guidestones are written in, we'll get into that again here in a minute. It has various facts about the size, weight, the astronomical features of the stones, and the date that it was installed. And then the sponsors of the project, which it just says, a group of businessmen. Each one is inscribed with the same message, but in 8 different languages. There's English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, traditional Chinese, and Russian. And the stones, we'll go over again in a minute what they actually say. You can see here the comparative size. That's how big these things are. And when they arrived in 1980, of course, that was in the height of the Cold War between Russia and America. And so before we get into what the stones say, you might want to keep that a little in mind, as opposed to comparing it to today's events. Because at the time when this came out, when the stones were unveiled, the world population was 4.4 billion. Currently, the world population is about 7.8 billion. So just a billion under double what it was 40 years ago. And when these stones came out, there's 10 guides, whether they're supposed to be new commandments or what, but there are 10 guides. And the first one is maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. So they're saying that whether they're saying that the population should be reduced to 500 million, or perhaps it's after a catastrophic event such as nuclear war, after Russia and America duke it out, that we shouldn't build up over 500 million again. Not sure. But it says that we should keep the world population at 500 million or less. With 7.8 billion people in the world, that's a lot of lost lives. It says guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. That's the second one. Unite humanity with a living new language. Now that one gets me a little worried. Seems like we're getting into a bit of the one world order or the new world order, and that's conspiracy kind of crap. But the fourth rule is guide for rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. That just sounds like a pretty good law to live by every day. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Okay, I'm good with that one again. But then number 6 gets me again. It's let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Not so sure about that one. Number 7, I think we can all agree, no matter what side you're on, left, right, center, out far left of center, or whatever. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Amen. Number 8 was balance personal rights with social duties. Number 9 is prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Another one that I could live with. And then the number 10 is be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. And so that is the message on the Georgia Guidestones. And it's not freaky to me. It's more of the cheeky, because this person bought land, gave the farm owner perpetual grazing rights to the land for his cattle, built this thing up, put these guides on there, and then a few years later, he donated it to the county or to the city where it's at. And so they've been involved or been responsible for caretaking of it. They got defaced several years ago with graffiti and just anti-New World Order kind of rhetoric. But that is the Georgia Guidestones. Again, you can find out more information about it on the internet. There's not a whole lot. You would figure after 40 years, R.C. Christensen would come forward, or they would do something with these stones. But the whole reason that it came up for me, it was just, with all the deaths that were going on around the world, the first one popped in my head. This was one of those useless things I had in my calendar or my Rolodex in the head. And so it just kind of popped in. And like I said, when I mentioned it to some other people, family members and friends, they had never heard of it. So I thought that would be an appropriate one to start out with. The second thing that I want to talk about is a subject that I wrote a pretty good size article on. It started out with just me wanting to debunk something, and then it turned out into a whole investigation. And we'll jump into that just right after this.
We'll be back right after this.
Check it out. MobileEdge.com has award-winning products with innovative features and edgy contemporary designs that empower you to look sharp and travel smart with your mobile tech. Your beloved, not to mention expensive gaming gear and mobile tech devices are an extension of you, so give them the protection and style they deserve wherever you go. Find them at MobileEdge.com and protect your tech with Mobile Edge. Bring it on.
All right. And so as what I was talking about is the worldwide hum. And if you haven't heard about this one, it is a rather freaky experience. All around the world, there have been instances of people hearing things that sound like Gabriel's trumpet, or just a really, really loud, all encompassing, coming from every direction at once horn. And it's been dubbed the worldwide hum. And like I said, it's been heard all over the place. And a few months ago, the mainstream media came out and they had a headline that said worldwide hum, or reason for worldwide hum found. And I got to looking at it, and it was blaming it on a little underwater volcano next to a little island thousands and thousands of miles away from just about every place that had heard this worldwide hum. But the mainstream media was reporting it as fact without even looking at it. And so I went to my whole purpose was debunking that all the worldwide hums could not be attributed to this one location. And as I started looking, I just started looking at some dates along with the hum, and come to find out, a lot of them, matter of fact, every single one that I looked at for, I think it was 2018, there was an earthquake within a very short amount of time after the hum was heard. Sometimes days, sometimes a couple of weeks. There was also volcanic activity after the hum was heard in Hawaii. And so, but like I said, every single incident that I looked at, there was an earthquake right after it. There was places in our country that have 300 and something earthquakes a year, whether they're minor or just low impact. But so I came to the conclusion that there was at least a possibility of some correlation between the worldwide hum and earthquakes. And you can read my article on geekinsider.com, just search for worldwide hum. But of course, you can also find a lot of videos on YouTube that have examples of the hum, and everywhere from Switzerland to Utah and everywhere in between. And most of the time they sound a little different, but they're kind of along, the same lines. And experts have looked at this, and seismic activity has been touted as the possible explanation. So, and like I say in my article, I'm no ecologist or volcanologist or geologist. I don't know. I just know what I found while I was looking this stuff up. And so if you're interested in that kind of stuff, and if you haven't heard about it, just go and check out Worldwide Hum. There's a wiki page on it that discusses it somewhat. I don't know if it links out to the articles. I know Inside Edition did a good piece on it here a while back that has some really good examples of it. But it is freaky. When I first heard about it, it was several years ago. It was, yet again, one of those things that I just kind of put back in the Rolodex in the back of the mind. And when I saw that article saying that the explanation had been found, I had to go and take a look. And sure enough, I found that it had been going on for years and years and years, even longer than what I had thought. And so it was interesting to see the correlation between earthquakes around the same time as the worldwide hum was heard. I still don't know that I would want to hear it because, like I said, it sounds like Gabriel's trumpet and that the end of the world is coming. But anyway, you can check that out online and get some more information. I didn't know, I'm kind of new to the studio thing here, and so I wasn't real sure on how to pull down an audio file for us to listen to on that. Plus, it's pretty annoying anyway, and so I didn't want to subject everybody to it unless they wanted to go hear it. But you can check that out. Now, the next one, I saved the best part of the show, or the bulk of the show, for this subject because it's one that, like I said at the beginning, I've written extensively about, and that's the Mandela Effect. And if you're not sure what the Mandela Effect is, again, there's 1,000,000,001 videos out there and my own articles on Geek Insider that goes into depth about what it is and all the possible effects. But as a brief rundown, back several years ago, Fiona Broome, who is right here, she went, I think that's Fiona. No, wait, wrong photo. That photo, that's Fiona. Fiona Broome was at a convention, and she got to talking to a bunch of people, and they found out or figured out that they all had a shared memory of Mr. Nelson Mandela dying while in prison back in the late 80s. And of course, being somewhat surprised when he was released from prison just a few months later. I share this one. This is one reason why I think I probably went down this particular rabbit hole rather deeply, is because I do remember watching Nelson Mandela's funeral. I have a vivid memory of it. And then I also have a vivid memory of being confuzzled when I saw him getting released from prison a few years later. However, I didn't find the Mandela Effect until about 3 years ago, and I fell headfirst down the rabbit hole. And what it is, folks, is it's not just remembering Nelson Mandela's funeral, which of course didn't happen at that time, but it is remembering all sorts of things differently than what they currently are. And there's lots and lots of examples. There is the fact on the passenger side mirror of your car. I spent years sitting in that side, seeing that mirror. My brother did the same thing, and a bunch of people that I've talked to all remember the same thing, that it said objects in mirror may be closer than they appear. Said that for years. When I saw that it is no longer that, I attributed it to a manufacturer change. That's not the case at all. It is now, and supposedly has always been, objects in mirror are closer than they appear. And my brother freaked out on this one. He's a mechanic. He works with cars every single day, and he just says that it's impossible. He tried to buy original factory parts for vehicles from the 50s and 60s, and same thing. It says are closer. So that's another example. There are numerous examples. And like I said, you can find my own articles, have a bunch of them broken down. There's videos that come out almost every day on the subject. But big ones for me is, another one is Ed McMahon never worked for Publishers Clearinghouse. He actually worked for a competitor. And while I could get by that, I'm, just place this lower competitor as being, PCH. Okay. But the kicker is that he never surprised winners at home with oversized checks. In fact, the official word is he never left the studio. He never surprised people. And that's a big one for me, is I remember him surprising people at home. But it's never the case. He never delivered an oversized check. And then I got all kinds of people. Hey guys, I just now saw my my new sister has popped in, and then my brother that I was talking about a minute ago. See, there he is. Objects in mirror may appear. I was sitting there talking about him, didn't even know he was here. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. But anyway, so the Ed McMahon never surprised winners. And what's weird is, and I guess this could be just to the fact that he wanted to make a paycheck, but he's been in numerous sitcoms, Roseanne in particular, where he showed up at the door with an oversized check. Golden Girls had a skit where one of the girls thought she was talking to Ed, Rose, I think, thought she was talking to Ed. And it just, the list goes on. And Ed even did a rap song saying that he was delivered fat checks. And so there's just all kinds of weird, what folks in the Mandela rabbit hole refer to as residue, or just, evidence that folks remember things the same way we do. And then another big one, guys, is the Lindbergh baby kidnapping mystery. It was never a mystery. They found the baby and they executed someone for the kidnapping and murder. So the Lindbergh baby kidnapping, where even Grandpa Simpson on The Simpsons says that he is the Lindbergh baby. None of it makes sense. They found a body, they executed someone, no mystery. Don't know why I ever saw Unsolved Mysteries on it and why it was always a mystery, because it just wasn't. And going along that same lines of a mystery that never was is Madeline Murray O'Hare. Any of you from Texas will likely remember them, especially if you're around my age, because she was the one that she was a famous atheist. She got prayers stopped in school in Texas. She ran a whole atheist organization, and she was touted as the most hated woman in America at one point. Well, she disappeared, and as far as I knew until about a year ago, they never had found her body. They never found anything. And that was one thing that kind of was always brought up, was the mystery of Madeline Murray O'Hare. And now her body was found 5 years after her disappearance, and the culprits were caught. And so that one isn't as big for me because I just don't have that anchor memory of her not being found. I don't have anything definitive of like the Lindbergh baby kidnapping. But it is interesting that along those lines that like several people I have asked, they remember that it was always a mystery. And that includes my wife and my mother-in-law. They remember that she was never found. But apparently we were wrong. And the one that kind of got me to laughing is Billy Graham. For a lot of folks out there, Billy Graham died multiple times and just kept on dying. This time it looks to be permanent. He didn't come back really fast, but there's some folks in the religious world that have nothing on Billy Graham because he can hold his own when it comes to coming back from the dead. And let's see here. Another big one. This is the one that really sent me into the whole world of the Mandela Effect, was Louie Anderson. I had known Louie Anderson to die. He died while he was doing Family Feud. And there was even a big thing about there being a Family Feud curse because Ray Combs had died, Richard Dawson had died, and then Louie Anderson had died. And then there was no death. I'm watching TV 3 years ago, and Louie Anderson's up on the screen, and he's doing some PSA for something. And I was like, oh, this must be an old commercial, and they're rerunning it. And the family must have given permission. Well, then a couple of days later, I see a commercial for Baskets, for the second season of Baskets. And it was a new show to me, but there's Louie Anderson. And I was like, what the hell? And so I go and type in Louie Anderson death, and the Mandela Effect came up. Pow, pow, pow. I wasn't the only one that was under the impression that he had died. And that's the other kicker for the Mandela Effect. It's not just you remembering something differently than what it happened or what current history shows. It's that tons and tons of people remember it that way. People from different walks of life, people that were, in different countries, people that are older than you, younger than you, that remember things the exact same way. Another one, I got my executive producer with this one the other day. I told Meredith, I say to her all the time, say goodnight, Gracie, and she'll go, goodnight, Gracie. And we got off the air the other night, and I said, well, that's a Mandela Effect, right? And she's like, what? She's shooting me the finger from the back room. She said, no, what? And I said, she never said that. Grace Allen never said goodnight, Gracie. She says, good night. Just a simple good night. And it is a little bit before my time, but that was always a thing. My mom always used to say it as well. That, I can still hear her voice in my head. Say good night, Gracie. Good night, Gracie. But now all she says is good night. And so the whole joke is ruined. And Grace Allen doesn't do the good night, Gracie. And I think Meredith is getting a little punch drunk in the background there. I see her doing all kinds of stuff. And that generally means that it's time for me to run a quick commercial. So
We'll be back right after this break. Cards, the Universe, and Everything is a trading card collecting battle card game that has a little something from everything. From the Old West to outer space and everything in between, Cards, the Universe, and Everything is great for gamers and collectors of all ages. Download it from your app store, and as you collect hundreds of available cards, there are more weekly, so you can craft up to 10 decks and battle against your friends and other players from around the world. And if you're an educator, check out cardstheuniverseandeverything.com for a special offer for you and your students.
All right. And I got to thank Meredith for putting together the intro to the show, not to mention the commercials that you've seen today. I've had some really good feedback from our sponsors on that. I just saw one pop through a while ago, and then I'll share that with Meredith. But folks, that kind of wraps up the show for today. This was the initial show I wanted to do, for Geeky, Cheeky, and Downright Freaky. But we're going to dive. I think each show going forward is probably going to be on one subject, and then we'll kind of branch off from there. But I wanted to cover something from each of the categories. We got the cheeky with the Georgia Guidestones. We got the freaky with the geeky with the worldwide hum and the investigation it took into finding the relation to earthquakes. And then, of course, the freaky with the Mandela Effect, because most people I know, even if they blow off, any possibilities that this could be true, and they attribute it all to memory, misremembering, they still think that it is a weird phenomenon, a freaky phenomenon, and it is, because to me, if it was just all memory, we would have different memories of different things. Some of us would remember the Kit Kat with a dash. Some of us would remember it without. And then some would remember that it was called Kit Kat with a C or something to that effect. It just wouldn't be the same exact memory. It just wouldn't be. There would be environmental factors. There would be upbringing factors that would make these things different. Now, granted, in a lot of them, it could be cases such as confabulation between two different products. And that's why I didn't go deep into a bunch of the effects. I just kind of talked about the main ones that hit me. You can be warned, it's a deep rabbit hole if you start to go looking online. Geek Insider is a good place to start, because I do have it defined what the Mandela Effect is. There's multiple articles that go into different ones that I've discovered over the years. And then, of course, anytime that you discover one, especially if it's one that your family remembers the way you do, drop me a line. I always like new ones. I'm always watching Reddit to see what the new ones are. But another thing is make sure that you follow us on Facebook. This show will be live every Wednesday at 6 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock Eastern. But and then it'll be rebroadcast on our podcast, which subscribe to our podcast. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcast. Just search for Geek Insider. And then make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Meredith has her show live at 5 Eastern, which is Lady Geek. We usually have some good guests over there. Meredith and I will be getting back into Geek Speak this next week, where we have special guests that we interview from authors, filmmakers. I believe next week we've got an author lined up, and so we've got a lot of fun things planned around here. We're also got contests coming up on Geek Insider, so make sure that you watch geekinsider.com. And let me just check something here. Jason, you said you have a new one. Well, you have to tell me when we talk. We'll have to talk soon. We always do. Anyway, we talk every other night just about. But that is my number one man right there. I'm always on his left. He's always on mine. And Meredith, I'm about ready to cut out of here. And Meredith was, like I said, Meredith put together my intro, in which all I told her was the name and gave her the music. She picked everything else, put it together exactly what I had in mind. She kind of reads my brain at times, and it's good, because I think there's times when mine doesn't work. But if you haven't done so, going back to our YouTube channel, we are having the snips up from our virtual con. And so the panels that went on for that entire weekend are now available on the YouTube channel. You can watch the authors panel, the filmmakers channel, panel, and all that good stuff. And she's loading up more. The Athena Finger interview is up on the podcast now as well. If you missed that, you missed my favorite part of the whole entire weekend. I'm still stoked about meeting her. And other than that, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you next week at this time. What did he say? I missed that. We will see you next week at this time. Make sure you tune in. thanks for those that have tuned in, my family and the friends, and of course, all of you out there in YouTube and Facebook land. And we will see you again next week. Thanks, everybody.
This is a Geek Insider production. For advertising opportunities, contact advertising@geekinsider.com. Thank you for tuning in to Geeky, Cheeky, and Downright Freaky with Matthew Harris. Join him every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. Until then, geek out.